So do you think we're marching toward the globalist future of owning nothing? Is that where this cliff leads, with BlackRock practically owning the White House at this point?
Oh, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is all part of the agenda. They want a population that is dependent, that is not financially independent, that doesn't own a home, that has to work 9 to 5 jobs. They can't be small landlords. They can't be small business owners. They have to be completely dependent on corporate America or on the federal government. And that's the direction we're heading. And part of that is to make sure that Americans become renters, that having a family, having their own home is completely out of reach. This is all part of the destruction of Western civilization. It's happening through a variety of different mechanisms, whether it's through corporate interests, globalist interests, China, our own broken elites. And it's very sad to see what's happening. It's also even sadder to see many on the so-called right, many so-called conservatives, Republicans, simply putting their hands up in the air and saying, oh, well, we can't do anything about it. That's the free market at work. It really isn't. There's a lot more going on here, and I would hope people would like to dig into it to really solve some of these issues as they're impacting our nation.
Yeah, because at this point, when it comes to big corporate America and big government, I can't really tell where one ends and the other begins. They've kind of become this leviathan, if you will, this blob altogether. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of the headlines now from the Wall Street Journal, but also from what's supposed to be more of the trendy progressive left-wing outlets like Vox. And they'll have these headlines saying, well, you know, young people you don't even need to buy a house. It's actually better to rent forever. And it's actually better not to have a career and to put down roots. And it's almost like they're trying to sweet talk us into becoming serfs. Have you noticed that pattern?
Oh, that's exactly what it is. They're trying to market this neo-serfdom to Americans and to the world at large. That's really what they want to return to. And it's sad to see what's happening, and no one's pushing back. And there's very little in the way of institutional support against these initiatives, whether it comes down to home ownership, whether it comes down to the hardships of starting a family, or whether it comes down to just the simple financial burdens not to live paycheck to paycheck. This is all being orchestrated. It's all being done in unison, and it's all being marketed in the most creepy kind of Orwellian fashion. And I really don't like the way things are heading. I think a lot of Americans are sick of it, but so many are buying into it sheepishly, and that's what's really depressing.
That is, I mean, I see some of these markets, Atlanta and Texas is another big one that we see sometimes as much as 1 out of every 7 homes being sold are being sold to these firms. We know BlackRock and others in Texas, they'll buy homes by the hundreds. They'll buy entire suburban tracts. And of course, like I said, they're buying it at above market value. So it's pushing up prices everywhere else. And it means that these people who are buying or renting in those areas will be forever renters. And that's a very scary thing that we're seeing. And it's quite concerning because these big corporations, when they buy into these homes, these communities, these neighborhoods, they don't have any vested interest in the community at hand. I mean, we saw that, for example, with all the BLM and Antifa rioting the last year. Target, Starbucks, and the rest of them, they didn't care what happened to their small branches. They kept funding the rioting because they didn't care if they lost a couple of branches, as long as the mom and pop shops and the small businesses, as long as they got crushed in all the mayhem. And so I see that kind of happening here as well when it comes to these suburban neighborhoods, that they don't care about the investment, that they don't care about what happens to that community anywhere down the road.
Absolutely. I mean, they're destroying the community. They're destroying the small landlord. These are not, and they're trying to vilify them on top of it. They're trying to make it seem like the guy who has a multifamily, he has a duplex or whatever, and he's just using one unit to pay off his mortgage, is somehow the evil robber baron in society, while BlackRock has nothing to be held accountable for. It's absolutely ridiculous. And our republic was based on the idea of free and independent citizens who own their own land, who have their own views, who have their own financial resources, who could stand up to a leviathan, as you mentioned earlier, which is this bleeding of this merging of both corporate and governmental powers into one single entity. That's why these old Reaganite talking points about the free market just don't cut it anymore, because what we're seeing is the merging of corporate power and state power along the lines of also globalist power. I mean, it's transnational. It crosses borders. They're working with China. They're working with other nations, and they have no interest in the local community, in the state, or in the nation as a whole. cripple. So we need to put a stop to it. We need to push back. There needs to be some laws, some regulations, and some pushback against corporate America, which is engaging in these kind of exploitative tactics. And I understand why people were pushing originally for the rent moratorium. It made sense at the time, given the economic downturn and COVID, and people were out of work. But now it's being used to cripple small business owners, landlords, so then everything else could be centralized, bought up, and held within a few different corporate bank accounts or massive landowners like Bill Gates or whoever it is. This is not a society we want to live in. This is a really dangerous concentration of wealth and power. We need to stand up to it.